and gentlemen, we are very grateful and honored that the King of Spain is with us. And I would like to ask the President of the World Jurist Association and of the World Law Foundation to greet all the guests.
Your Majesty, King Felipe, Commissioner of Justice, Mr. Reinders, our Minister of Justice, Mrs. Job, ambassadors, authorities, and dignitaries. Welcome, everybody, gathered this morning in Madrid to celebrate, proclaim, and promote the rule of law around the world. On this morning, we will be presenting here in Europe the next World Law Congress to take place in New York at the UN headquarters and by the New York City Bar Association, next July 20th and 21st. I hope all of you can make it and share in this program that will be gathered more than 1,000 jurists from 60 countries. This year we will celebrate the 60th anniversary of the first World Law Congress that took place in Athens in 1963, under the leadership of Earl Warren, Chief Justice of the United States, and Charlie Ryan, American Bar Association past president. At that time, the world was struggling and under the permanent threat of a nuclear war. 60 years later, we are not facing an easier situation. I would say that today's world looks more similar to the one between wars in the 20th century. The war in Ukraine is becoming more and more an international martial conflict. Today, as then, democracies are essentially challenged. Many may think that autocracies will prevail. At the presentation of the World Law Congress celebrated 3 weeks ago at the UN headquarters in New York, retired Justice of the United States, Stephen Breyer, made a good argument while receiving the Medal of Honor of the World Jurist Association. He said to all of us, the US Constitution is approaching its 250th anniversary. Historically speaking, democracy and the rule of law are still an experiment. And his question was, will this experiment prevail and be sustainable for future generations? The rule of law is a system where human dignity is in the center, and any type of power, particularly public power, is limited by a constitution. Liberty, peace, and dignity can be only protected from tyranny and abuse of power if we live in a society governed by legal means and not by force. On this morning, we inaugurate here in Madrid this Rule of Law Digital Center as well. Creado por la World Law Foundation y la World Jurist Association, con el apoyo de Cremades y Calvo Sotelo, este centro tiene como propósito fomentar y educar sobre los principios fundamentales del Estado de Derecho, especialmente en el contexto digital en el que nos encontramos. El Estado de Derecho es el mayor bastión para defender a los ciudadanos de los abusos de poder político y económico. Les permite ejercer sus libertades sin menoscabar las de los demás. Las leyes fueron creadas para mantener el orden en la sociedad y preservan y desarrollan nuestro sistema de vida. Difundir este concepto es indispensable para lograr el mantenimiento del imperio de la ley, que necesita también de la adhesión de la comunidad. Reconocer el papel singular e histórico que representan algunas mujeres y hombres del derecho es también fundamental para afrontar los apasionantes desafíos que nos presenta la digitalización y el progreso de las tecnologías emergentes. La inteligencia artificial, la edición genética, la nanotecnología, la robótica y la neurociencia están incidiendo ya en la propia naturaleza humana. En los próximos años tendremos que decidir cómo queremos que sea el futuro de nuestra especie. Y una vez más, el derecho será imprescindible si queremos que ese futuro sea verdaderamente más humano, conforme a su dignidad intrínseca. No quedan lejos los días en los que posiblemente tendremos que ampliar la Declaración de los Derechos Humanos para asegurar que sigamos siendo humanos. We're going to recognize today some special figures that represent role models and lives devoted to being consensus builders and promoters of the rule of law. 5 outstanding women coming from the UK, Fiji, Malaysia, South Africa, and Afghanistan will be receiving the Ruth Bader Ginsburg Medals of Honor. They are very respected and considered to be strong pillars of the law among their fellow citizens. Thanks for your commitment and devotion for justice, freedom, and peace. The World Jurist has a tradition of connecting their activities with the local political communities where we celebrate our gatherings. This is why we want also to present today the World Jurist Association Medal of Honor to recognize 3 Spaniards recognized as leaders of the law: Professor and retired Justice of the Spanish Constitutional Court, Manuel Aragón Reyes; former President of URIA Menéndez, Luis de Carlos; and founder and chairman of Pedro Pérez Llorca. Believe me, these individuals are highly respected among us and are still active architects of a world where laws prevent autocrats, ideologies, parties, or just root power to lead our lives. And we are going to honor my friend, Mr. Andrew Young, with the most outstanding award of the WGA, the World Peace and Liberty Award. As a prominent leader in the fight for civil rights in the USA, the image of Andrew Young belongs to the American heritage and to the world contemporary history of struggling for human rights. You will discover more about him through the presentation that President Leonel Fernández, another champion of democracy, will speak later. I'm really thankful to you, Ambassador Young, for taking the time to have dinner in Atlanta with our delegation. Me and my wife, Arantxa Calvo Sotelo, Juan Luis Cebrián, Micaela Milacha, and Diego Solana at Lynn Rogers' premises. We will never forget that the way you prayed before dinner, the talk about Black Lives Matter movement, and your close friends, Robert Kennedy and Dr. Martin Luther King. Thanks a lot, Andrew, for your willingness to receive the World Peace and Liberty Award in Madrid. Today, you will join a powerful gallery of statespersons and figures as Winston Churchill, René Cassin, Nelson Mandela, King Felipe, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and the people of Colombia. Also tonight in the gala dinner, we will be honored another incredible American figure with the WGA Medal of Honor, Nancy Hollander, an attorney dedicated to human rights and human dignity. Please, do not forget to watch the film The Mauritanian in Apple TV, featured by Jodie Foster, if possible before tonight at 8 o'clock. Finally, let me thank our sponsors, Lynn and Alexia Rogers, Kia, Broadware, and the World Law Foundation trustees present here today, Vivian Redding, Nicolás Martín, Carlos López Lai, Lynn Rogers, Ben Schneider, Marcelo Chavarne, Antonio Poncioni, Jorge Neri. Also thanks to the New York World Law Congress Steering Committee members, Susan Coleman, President of the New York City Bar Association, and Brad Karp, President of Paul Weiss. Also thanks to our staff leaders, Jackie Rodríguez, Teodora Toma, Gabriel Fernández Rojas, Miguel Larios, Diego Solana, and Teresa del Riego, Julia Gutiérrez, and Leopoldo Lolelo, who together with Jane Ginsburg and Bo Young have been taking care of so many institutional and logistic aspects of this special event. Particularly thanks to Carlos González Soria for his effort to coordinate the launching of the Rule of Law Digital Center. And last but not least, remember, we are counting on all of you to be present in New York in July, when we will deliver the World Peace and Liberty Award to the European Union for representing a political reality based in the law that has been able to overcome hundreds of years of conflicts and wars among us Europeans. Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, will receive the award in its presentation. Thank you to all of you for attending today and bringing your solidarity and support. The rule of law is what we owe to our children and the generations to come. Thank you very much.
after our President's official inauguration of the proceedings, let me start with something which is very dear to our heart. The rule of law also means equality, equality between men and women. And we have noticed in the last years that there are so many famous men jurists around the world, very known, and so few famous jurists around the world, women, very known. We want to change that because they exist. Simply, they are not under the headlines, and we want to put the headlines on them in order to make them role models for the female jurist talent worldwide. So we will start our proceedings with a panel, Breaking Glass Ceilings in the Legal World, in which the nominees for the Ruth Bader Ginsburg Medals of Honor of the World Jurist Association will take the floor. I will present shortly, only shortly because the CV is so long, shortly the different ladies who will be honored today. Navi Pillai from South Africa. She's chair of the Advisory Council of the International Nuremberg Principles Academy, vice president of the International Association Against Death Penalty, United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. It was in 1967 that Mrs. Pillai became the first woman to start a law practice in Natal province, South Africa, and the first black woman to serve in high court as from 1995. As a practitioner, Madame Pillai defended many opponents of apartheid. She was elected judge of the International Criminal Court in 2003, and later on appointed judge and president of the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. The second, Brenda Hale from United Kingdom. Baroness Hale of Richmond retired in 2021 as the United Kingdom's most senior judge. She was the first female Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom from 2017 to 20. Visiting professor at Cambridge University, she taught law at Manchester University during 18 years. In 1984, Lady Hale became the first woman to serve on the UK Law Commission. Her work resulted in the Children's Act and the Mental Capacity Act. She was also a founding member of the Human Fertilization and Embryology Authority. She was promoted to the Court of Appeal of England and Wales in 1999. In 2004, she became Lord of the Appeal in Ordinary in the House of Lords. And in 2009, when the laws became the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom, she became Deputy President and President. And I really like her Omnia Femina Equissime, her motto, all females are equal in all things. And that should also be the motto of our discussion today. Ambika Sreenivasan from Malaysia. She is a prominent lawyer, known for her pursuit of judicial reform, religious tolerance, women's equality. She was president of the Malaysian Bar Council, fighting an uphill battle for gender equality, and also advocating freedom of religion, free elections, and judicial reform. She received, by the way, in 2009, the United States Secretaries of State International Women of Courage Award. Well deserved, Madam. She successfully fought to amend the Malaysian constitution to ensure that women's testimony carried equal weight of that of men in court. And currently she serves as in the executive committee of the Women's Aid Organization and with the Bar Council Special Committee on issues related to indigenous inhabitants. The fourth woman is Imrana Lyalal from Fiji. She's a human rights lawyer and a gender specialist at the Asian Development Bank in Manila. She co-founded the Fiji Women's Rights Movement, and she was chair of the inspection of the World Bank during 2018 and 21. She began as a senior social development specialist for gender in the Asian Development Bank and a commissioner in Fiji's first Human Rights Commission, the first of its kind in a Pacific island. Mrs. Jalal served as a commissioner of the Geneva-based International Commission of Jurist between 2000 and 2017, and you might have read her book, A Legal Rights Handbook, Law for Pacific Women, the architect, actually, of Fiji's Family Law Act of 2003. And last but not least, Asifa Kakar from Afghanistan. Judge Kakar is president of the International Association of Afghan Refugee Women Judges, aiming at rescuing female judges in danger in Afghanistan and to help them resettle, integrating into society by diminishing language, cultural, and social barriers. Madame Kakar is one of the 8 female Afghan judges who have been received in this country. And she is one of the first female judges in the country, magistrate of the Supreme Court of Afghanistan until 21, and member of the drafting commission of the Constitution of Afghanistan up from 2003. So that is our panel. And now, wait until you have heard them. You will, this will not be enough what you have done that, but the moderation will be done by Encarnacion Roca, Emeritus Vice President of the Constitutional Court of Spain and partner of Cremades and Cabell Sotelo. The floor is yours, Madam.
His Majesty the King, Javier Cremades, is a function of the World Jurist Association to recognize the activities of members of the judiciary in favor of fundamental rights around the world. The recognition is addressed in a special way to women who have assumed as judges or other members of the judiciary, lawyers, etc., the responsibility of protecting human beings against the violation of fundamental rights in their respective countries. You have broken your own glass ceilings with great effort and great results. Congratulations. These awards are named after an iconic justice, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, whose work as first a lawyer and after a justice of the US Supreme Court was also recognized by the World Jurist Association. Congratulations to all You are an example for today's generation of judges, lawyers and professors, and a role model as a supporter of the rule of law. I give you the floor in the order you have arrived to the here. So first, you are the first. You are the first. ¿Tenéis un micrófono por aquí? No, no. Un micrófono, por favor. ¿No hay? So, if you like to, you can.
I don't think we have a choice here. We don't have a mic.
Okay. You are right.
Male technicians.
The mic has arrived. The mic has arrived.
No, you are here. You are here.
I'm
Please.
here.
You are
How many minutes do I have?
very short.
That's very hard when you have a long story to tell. So you're quite right then, and Christian, that each one of us has broken the ceiling by getting where we are here. Mine was a much more difficult story because I faced all kinds of discrimination. When I completed the law degree, not a single white firm would give me articles. You have to serve 2 years articles. And they said, well, you're a woman, what if you fall pregnant? And they said, we can't have white secretaries taking instructions from a black woman. And thirdly, is your father a businessman? Will you bring business to us? So it's discrimination on all fronts, class, gender, and race. So what's the solution to breaking the glass ceiling that is still over the heads of all women? Is you continue to take action. You cannot keep quiet. You have to keep that ladder down for the next person to climb up. So my life story is a story of firsts, the first to deliver a judgment of the Rwanda tribunal that made rape and sexual violence a crime of genocide, a war crime. And this was in 1997. And can you imagine? It had never happened before where sexual violence of women was prosecuted as a crime. Instead, the soldiers were rewarded. Vietnam, for instance, you can have those yellow women as your trophies if you fight well. So I'll stop there. So that's the key message. We have to continue to take action, not only for women, but for a better society for all of us. Thank you for this opportunity.
You're welcome. Our second speaker will be Lady Brenda Hale. I know her from HS, but the floor is yours.
Thank you. Is this working?
No, it's not working.
Is it working now?
No.
I better come up.
Okay. No, by here, by here.
So, okay. Your Majesty, ladies and gentlemen, it's such a delight to be receiving this Ruth Bader Ginsburg Medal of Honor, and I'd like to start by paying a tribute to the notorious RBG, if I may. I counted her as a friend. She recognized that we had a great deal in common. We were both little dark-haired women, committed to the cause of gender equality, who rose to the highest court in our respective lands. She was also a very kind woman, and I think sometimes that's something that women can bring that hasn't always been there in the highest courts in the land. Generations of young lawyers who served as her law clerks can attest to the cards, tokens of friendships to mark the great occasions in their lives that she continued to send them throughout their careers. And she always said that the wisest decision she ever made was to marry her life partner, Marty Ginsburg. A clever and successful lawyer in his own right, but one of those rare men of his generation who was proud to be married to a clever and successful wife. That too was something that Ruth and I had in common. And they were both great cooks too. So, Ruth used to say that there would be enough women on the Supreme Court of the United States when there were 9. I don't aspire to that because I believe that diverse courts are better courts, that the top courts throughout the world, and indeed all courts, should have members who reflect the diversity of the communities they serve. This gives them democratic legitimacy. They are there to serve the whole community and not just a privileged few. And just by being there, diverse judges are visible embodiments of the law's values of justice, of fairness, and of equality. They also represent and encourage equal opportunity for the talented young lawyers from all backgrounds who are now joining our legal professions. And above all, diverse bodies make better decisions. But it's not enough to appoint diverse judges, they have to be made welcome and included in the judicial community. And that means that the judicial community may have to adapt its ways to make its more diverse members feel welcome. Then they can all feel part of the great enterprise of securing justice for everyone, whatever their gender, race, ethnicity, sexuality, or any other characteristic which might make them appear other to the majority. Democracy values each person individually and equally, even if the majority do not. And the rule of law is nothing if it does not support true democratic values. We in the United Kingdom have just been celebrating the coronation of our new king, a man who has, from the start, adopted progressive attitudes to the environment, to the climate, and to the young. So I'm especially grateful to Your Majesty, King Felipe VI, yes, for presenting these awards. His Majesty is also a jurist and was presented with the World Peace and Liberty Award during the World Law Congress in this very city in 2019. This award recognized his contribution to the rule of law in a very difficult situation in this country that was even challenging the enforceability of the Spanish Constitution of 1978. Having had some experience of challenging politicians who try to act unconstitutionally, those of you who remember my spider brooch will know what I'm talking about. I can really admire that, Your Majesty. So thank you, Your Majesty, and thank you to all of you for the great honor you're doing me.
Next speaker is Ambiga Srenebasan from Malaysia. Sorry for the pronunciation of your name.
Thank you very much. I have to say, with reference to the introduction, I can't take credit for any amendments to our Constitution, so I'll have to make that amendment to the introduction. But let me carry on talking about breaking glass ceilings in the legal world. Your Majesty, King Felipe VI of Spain, Mr. Javier Cremades, President of the World Jurist Association, Professor Jane Ginsburg, Honorable Jurists, and friends. In March 2009, Reem al-Numeri, a 14-year-old girl from Yemen, received the US International Woman of Courage Award for her role in fighting child marriage. She was just a girl, a child. She wasn't a woman. She herself was a victim, having been forced at the tender age of 12 to marry her 30-year-old cousin. It was reported that when she refused, she was bound and gagged by her father for the ceremony. Child marriage carries on to this day in many countries. All over the world, there are women and girls who struggle just to be treated as human beings, never mind to be treated equally. In Afghanistan, girls and women are fighting for the basic right to an education. In Iran, girls and women are fighting for their fundamental freedoms and for equal treatment. Those are just two examples. So when we speak of glass ceilings, we must hold close to our hearts the fact that so many women and girls around the world have not even broken free of their chains, leaving them with no access to the most basic of rights. They are vulnerable to abuse, trafficking, rape, incest, honor killings, female genital mutilation, and so many other crimes of physical and mental violence. There is no freedom from fear for them. In Malaysia, our patriarchal society is slow to come to terms with the concept of gender equality. There is, however, some good news in the legal arena. We have, since 2019, the first woman Chief Justice of Malaysia. Out of 11 judges in the federal court, that is the highest court, 6 are currently women. Of course, that could change. More than 50% of the Malaysian bar, that is the lawyers, are women. The tragedy is that while there are successes in the advancement of women in a few areas, there are dismal failures in many others. The tug of war between conservatism and patriarchy on the one hand, and equality and human rights on the other, has stood in the way of progress. It sometimes feels like we live in one country but exist in 2 different eras. So, does breaking the glass ceiling in the legal field really matter? And is it just about matching your counterparts in position and salary? Ruth Bader Ginsburg broke several glass ceilings at law school, as an advocate, and as a judge. She showed us how, in breaking those glass ceilings, one could advance the cause of equality and justice for women, and indeed for all, and to protect the vulnerable and oppressed. In my view, breaching the glass ceiling in the field of law means exactly that. Using that achievement to ensure justice and access to justice for all, becoming a voice for the voiceless, and improving the lives of others through law. Central to the issue of justice for all is, of course, the rule of law. The rule of law promotes equality. It ensures freedom from fear. It strives to uphold human dignity. It provides an avenue for climate justice. It can help us save the planet. However, the rule of law is weakened without the adherence to the doctrine of separation of powers and an independent judiciary. Our judiciary in Malaysia is currently facing intimidation and relentless attacks for daring to hold the powerful accountable. The Malaysian bar has always defended the independence of the judiciary, and as lawyers, we must, and we will continue to do so. Constant vigilance is of the utmost importance. Eminent jurists, some of whom are here, inspire us to believe and hope that a more just world is possible. The World Jurist Association understands this truth, but also knows that the rule of law requires constant attention and nurturing. They richly deserve our praise and support for their invaluable work in promoting the rule of law. I wish to salute President Javier Cremades and Professor Jane Ginsburg for their unwavering commitment to the rule of law. Friends, when we heard the news of the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg in September 2020, a hush descended upon us, even as far away as Malaysia. In the stillness of that moment was the realization that the achievements of this, quote, pint-sized powerhouse, close quote, as she has been described, did not matter just in the US, but mattered the world over. Such was her reach. I wish to thank the World Jurist Association for the privilege and honor of an association through this award with one of the greatest jurists of our time, given in this auditorium named after her and in this beautiful city of Madrid. More so is the honor in receiving this award from Your Majesty, King Felipe, an awardee of the World Jurist Association for your role in protecting the rule of law in Spain. Finally, it is also my honor and privilege to be here in the company of such distinguished individuals as my fellow awardees, each of whom has been utterly faithful to the rule of law and to its advancement in their respective countries. Adapting from a quote from Cicero, we must be slaves to the rule of law so that we may be free. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Our next speaker is Imrana Jalal from Fiji.
Thank you. Hello. Is it working? No.
Jackie.
It's not working.
See,
Can you hear me? Oh,
yeah,
all right,
it works.
Great. Thank you so much. My voice is so loud, you could probably hear me without the microphone. Your Majesty, dear jurist colleagues, I was told to tell my personal story, so mine will be a bit more personal. I have admired the World Jurist Association from afar for many years. It is one of the few unique global organizations that includes judges, lawyers, practitioners, academics, and so on. So for this I salute them. And since Athens 1963, it has organized the World Law Congress all over the world. For the World Jurist Association to invite me here in the presence of such distinguished jurists and to give me an award connecting me with the singular and iconic figure of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg is an honor. It's a dream, actually, for a lawyer from faraway Fiji Islands. I can think of no higher honor for a woman jurist. I would like to pay my respects to His Majesty King Philippe for gracing this event, as well as to the current president and our wonderful host, Javier Cremades, and the president of the jury of the Ruth Bader Ginsburg Medal of Honor, Jane Ginsburg. It is such a deep honor to meet you, Professor Ginsburg, a person so deeply connected with the notorious RBG. One of the important lessons I learned from your mother's teachings is, and I quote, "Fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you." To give you a context of the region that I come from, it is a very poor region. 2 out of 3 women in my region are victims of gender-based violence. It also has the lowest rate of female parliamentarians and legislators. So for me, it's an honor to be in a country where 39% of your legislature is women and more than half the cabinet are women. So for me, this is a great honor indeed. Since getting our independence in 1970, my country has been racked by interruptions to democracy through one military coup after another. And so that is the context of the rule of law in my country, where it is very fragile. I grew up in a very strict Muslim household, but was raised by a father who believed profoundly in education. He used to quote the Prophet and say, "The way to heaven is paved with gold for Muslim fathers who educate their daughters." During my early career, I spent a lot of time in the courts of law representing poor women and girls, and the way they were treated made me so angry that I formed an organization called the Fiji Women's Rights Movement to fight for women's rights. We started out by looking at things like rape and domestic violence laws, citizenship laws, and family law. But it was hard to progress because of the constant interruptions to democracy through the military coups. In my country and in the developing world in general, the rule of law and women's rights are tied up together. Whenever there's an interruption to the rule of law, women's rights take a back step. And so we then had to engage in the struggle of democracy to get women's rights back on the agenda. Nevertheless, during the brief periods when we had democratic governments, we were able to pass good legislation affecting citizenship rights and the rights of women and children in family law. But there's a heavy personal cost for women human rights defenders in particular, because when you put yourself out there and you say you're defending other women and children or you're defending the rule of law, it makes you very vulnerable. And during various military takeovers, I was threatened with rape, I was imprisoned briefly, and so on and so forth. So these are the types of vulnerabilities that women human rights defenders face all over the world. My husband and I also faced 4 years of court cases where sham charges were filed against us. Eventually, I left Fiji in 2010 and joined the Asian Development Bank and subsequently the World Bank, where I was the chair of the inspection panel investing complaints against the World Bank. So my long periods with both the banks gave me an opportunity to use my skills to have an impact on women regionally and globally through the banks that I work with. As I look back on my life, and I was asked by Teresa to comment on some of the things that shaped me, I would say that my dedication to the rule of law has been important, and I share that in common with all the women up here on the stage. And even when there has been a personal cost, I think you have to commit to it, because if you don't, there's a long-lasting impact to the breaking up of the rule of law. And in my region, I have watched with horror as both judges and lawyers have actively participated in the dismantling of the rule of law. And for me, this has been a very, very terrible thing to watch. But also being shaped by a coup culture has made me tougher, stronger, and more resilient. It is not a privilege that many other lawyers enjoy that I was able to escape, because there are many human rights lawyers all over the world, especially in the developing world, and those who work in autocratic regimes who face this struggle every single day of their lives. And I salute and honor them as I honor those who are up here on the stage with me. All of the above highlights the critical need for organizations that defend the rule of law, like the World Jurist Association, by bringing together a unique legal fraternity. I thank you for inviting me here today and for this amazing award in the name of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, whose life continues to inspire me and other women jurists from all over the world. Gracias, thank you.
Our last speaker will be Asifa Kakar from Afghanistan. Please. You prefer stay here?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. جلالت مآب عالی قدر شاه کشور اسپانیا و حاضرین این جلسه، سلام و روزتان بخیر. من قاضی آصفه کاکر هستم و خرسند هستم که در جمع شما محترمان حضور داشته و به نمایندگی از قضات زن افغان، زن افغان پناهنده در کشور اسپانیا صحبت می نمایم. در قدم نخست جا دارد که از حضور جلالت مآب شاه اسپانیا، اراکین و مقامات دولتی و غیر دولتی و همچنان از انجمن بین المللی حقوقدانان که ما را مفتخر به این جایزه دانسته‌اند اظهار سپاس و تشکر بکنم. این جلسه در حال تجلیل می گردد که در کشور به نام افغانستان میلیون‌ها زن و دختر در این سرزمین زیر سلطه طالبان از تمام حقوق اساسی انسانیشان محروم اند و با مشکلات و خشونت‌های متعدد دست و پنجه نرم می دارند. پس از بیشتر از 1 سال تسلط رژیم طالبان در افغانستان، این کشور در تمام عرصه‌های سیاسی، اقتصادی، آموزشی، حقوق بشری و مدنی عقبگرد چشمگیر داشته است و افغانستان اولین کشور است که زنان و دختران این سرزمین از حقوق تحصیل تعلیم محروم می باشند. افغانستان کشور است که در تمام ادوار تاریخ تحصیل و تعلیم برای زنان در این جامعه بسا دشوار بوده و زنان برای رسیدن به هدفشان مشکلات فراوانی را متحمل می شدند. از جمله شخص خودم که با تحمل کردن سختی های فراوان و مبارزه توانستم به چوکی قضا و عدالت برسم و شانه به شانه با مردان کار کنم و حکم صادر نمایم. و زمینه برابری و زمینه را برای باقی زنان در بخش قضا مساعد بسازم. در سال 2002 میلادی عضو کمیسیون تصویب قانون اساسی افغانستان توسط فرمان رئیس جمهور آن وقت تعیین گردیدم. با مبارزه توانستم که برابری حقوق زن و مرد را با دیگر همکارانم تصویب نموده و بعد از لوی جرگه قانون اساسی که در آنجا به تصویب رسید و تایید گردید این البته یک دستاورد بزرگ است. آمدن طالبان به قدرت تمام زحمات آمدن طالبان با قدرت تمام زحمات زنان در چهار دهه گذشته به باد فنا رفت. اولین اقدام طالبان تمام زنان قاضی را از سمت‌هایشان منفک و افراد مربوط خود را بدون در نظر داشته این دانش مسلکی و قضایی به پست‌های قضایی مقرر نمودند. و زنان قضات در یک حالت بی‌سرنوشتی مطلق به سر میبرند. بعد از تسلط کامل طالبان بعد از تسلط افغانستان توسط گروه طالبان اکثرا قضات به کمک انجمن بین المللی قضات زن از افغانستان به کشورهای امن منتقل شدند و من هم بعد از گذشت مدت که در افغانستان به طور مخفیانه زندگی می نمودم به کمک و همکاری انجمن بین المللی قضات زن و انجمن قضات اسپانیا و دولت شاهی اسپانیا با پوشیدن برقع از راههای صعب العبور به پاکستان رفته و از آنجا به کشور شاهی اسپانیا رسیدم. با وجود که ما قضات در امن به سر میبریم اما با مشکلات زیاد روبرو هستیم. از جمله نبود سرپناه دائمی برای ما قضات، زمینه خودکفایی و ادغام فامیل های ما قضات می باشد. قضات افغان پناهنده در این کشور یک تقاضا نامه را ترتیب نمودیم که به شاه اسپانیا تقدیم می گردد. در خاتمه برای شاه طول عمر با سعادت توأم با پیشرفت و ترقی این کشور در تمام عرصه ها را خواهان هستم. تشکر از توجه شما. علینا میشه که امو نامه را شما برای شاه تقدیم کنین اگر اجازه شاه باشه.
Thank you very much. It's time to receive the awards. Thank you for your words and for your friendly stay here.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think we are all moved by the speeches and the presentations which have been done by these extraordinary role models. We will move now to the awarding ceremony of the Ruth Bader Ginsburg Medals of Honor, and I call to the stage the president of the jury of the Ruth Bader Ginsburg Medals, the daughter of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who is a professor at Columbia Law School.
Thank you very much, Your Majesty, Ambassador Young, honorees, and friends. I would like to acknowledge the jury that selects the honorees and say a word about them and about our criteria. The jury consists of Javier Cremades, Vivian Reding, and Encarnacion Roca, all of whom are here. And I would like to mention the others who were not able to be here for this ceremony. They include Justice Albie Sachs, a renowned opponent of apartheid and former Justice of the South Africa Supreme Court, President Jose Ramos Horta of East Timor, and then 4 of my mother's former law clerks, Justice Rachel Weiner Apter of the New Jersey Supreme Court, Elizabeth Preligar, Solicitor General of the United States, Professor Amanda Tyler of Berkeley, and President Elizabeth McGill of the University of Pennsylvania. The role of the jury is to recognize and promote women from many continents whose achievements as jurists, often under very challenging circumstances, as we've just heard, epitomize our aspirations for women's equality and the rule of law. As Justice Jalal just mentioned, the 2 of those, the rule of law and women's equality, go hand in hand. In making these selections, the jury is confident that the honorees will, by their example, continue to, and I quote, keep the ladder down for the next person to step up, as Judge Pillai so movingly put it. Thank you.
Please, as a witness, move up to the stage. Xavier Cremades, Pilar Lobr, and Didier Reinders, in order to hand over the medals. I would like to call to the stage His Majesty King Felipe to award the medals. Now for the first one, I call Navi Pillai to proceed with the awarding of the medal. I call to the stage Brenda Hale to receive the medal. Brenda, please. The next one is Ambiga Srenevasan. Please come up to receive the medal. Thank you, Madam. The next one is Imrana Yalal. Please move to the stage. And please, Asifa Kakar, could you come to receive the medal? Thank you to the president of the jury, Jane, and to congratulations to all the recipients. Jane, if you could go down. And I call Eugenio Ribbon, Dean of the Madrid Bar Association, to join His Majesty on stage. We are now proceeding to the World Jurist Association's Medals of Honor, which recognizes jurist personalities worldwide who, through their career, have made the world of law a better place to be. The first one is Manuel Aragon Reyes, Emeritus Judge of the Constitutional Court of Spain and Emeritus Professor of Constitutional Law. He is the trustee of the World Law Foundation, has served as academic director of the Law Congress of Madrid and Barranquilla, as well as a member of the organizing committee for the Congress in New York. Please proceed to the stage. The next recipient is Pedro Perez Lorca, president of Pedro Lorca Abogados. Throughout his more than 30 years of career, Pedro has been an example for Spanish lawyers, a leader in promotion of the defense of the rule of law, and an active supporter of the activities of the World Jurist Association in Spain. Please proceed to the meeting. May I call on Luis de Carlos Petran, former senior and managing party of Uria Mendes and trustee of Foundation. Professor Ujura for 40 years has been a leading lawyer with an outstanding international vision, law professor and founding trustee of the World Law Foundation. Luis has been an active supporter of the promotion of the rule of law and of the activities of the World Organization. Please, Luis, proceed to the receiving of the medal. Thank you, Your Majesty. Thank you, all the witnesses. We will now proceed with a presentation of the World Law Congress in New York in July this year. I would like to call David Covell, who is a co-general counsel of the World Jurist Association and member of the New York Steering Committee, to come to the podium. And while he does so, I would like to show the video of the World Jurist Congress in New York. David Cole, the floor is yours.
Your Majesty, extraordinarily impressive honorees, respected jurists and lawyers, President Krematis, esteemed guests. As you have heard, I think, every 2 years, the World Law Foundation, the World Law Congress, the World Jurist Association hosts the World Law Congress. It organizes it. These congresses have been occurring since 1963, every 2 years. The first one was in Athens, Greece. This year, as you've heard, the Congress will be celebrating its 60th year anniversary in the country of its origin. The World Jurist Association was formed in the United States and will be in New York. The New York City Bar Association, which is a venerable institution and has a beautiful building, will be hosting the first day on July 20th. There will be, as with other congresses, numerous panels discussing legal topics of importance amongst leaders, juridical leaders and thinkers. The idea, the intent, is to gather these leaders, these thinkers, more humble people like me, and to learn from each other, share experiences, and in so doing, maybe by degrees, strengthen the fundamentals, the fundaments of the rule of law. So following this event, after July 20th, on July 21st, the plenary session of the World Law Congress will take place, and that will take place at the United Nations headquarters. On that day, the World Jurist Association will, among other things, present the 2023 World Peace and Liberty Award. The recipient this year, not a person, but an institution, the European Commission. This award is the highest recognition granted by the World Jurist Association. And as you've heard, the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, will receive the award on behalf of the Commission. And to do a little plug, we hope to see you and your colleagues on July 20th and 21st in New York City. We'll be there, and you can register, as you saw, at the website worldlawcongress.com. But as a precursor to this Congress, we've had opening sessions. This is one of them. Micro-congresses, if you will. And there was another one last month, April 13th, and that was held at the UN headquarters as well. And there, we honored a number of jurists. The focus was education and the promotion of environmental law. And there were some incredibly impressive jurists there who educated us about the development of our environmental law throughout the world. In addition, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Canada was there, Richard Wagner, who received an award. And last but not least, the Honorable Justice Stephen Breyer was there and received an award. It's my honor now to share with you a video that was presented at that time during that micro-congress, as I called it. And we'll see it, I think now. It was delivered in honor of Justice Stephen Breyer by former President Bill Clinton.
This organization has close ties with the ABA, and it was our past president, Charles Ryan, who helped establish this association and establish this cooperation.
I'm honored to join all of you gathered at the United Nations today to celebrate the opening session of the New York World Law Congress. I want to thank the World Jurist Association and its chairman, Javier Cremades, for hosting today's program and for the important role the organization plays in our international community.
The point of law is to protect freedom. It's to protect everyone's freedom and to have rules by which we relate to one another in society.
Justice Breyer, on behalf of the World Jurist Association and the entire global legal community, I thank you and I salute you for your extraordinary service and your enduring legacy.
A new nation created in liberty and based on the proposition that all men are created equal. Today we are fighting a great war, and this is the point. Freedom, equality, rule of law.
The world is struggling. We really have a difficult time to promote and preserve the rule of law, even within democracies.
The World Congress is a unique opportunity for attorneys, jurists, and legislatures from throughout the world to get together every 2 years to really focus on issues affecting the rule of law.
As a young person, these World Jurist Association events are very appealing to young people because it gives us an opportunity to get involved in big issues that are going on in the world.
I am grateful for the World Jurist Association and its international network of leaders who take action and inspire others to do the same.
The World Law Congress this 20 and 21st of July, it's the main opportunity for all the world to work very hard for the rule of law.
When we come together at the World Law Congress to talk about the rule of law, one of the things that is so important is that because we all come from different countries, we manifest different problems associated with the rule of law.
We are living in a world increasingly affected by climate change. There are growing occurrences of natural events and an increasing need to transition to a low-carbon economy.
So congratulations to Justice Breyer and to all the honorees, and best wishes to all of you for a productive session of the World Law Congress.
We are all looking forward to July this year, but you know we have a Congress every 2 years. So we prepare July this year, but we prepare already the next Congress is 2 years from now, and I would like to call on Henry Molina, the President of the Supreme Court of Dominican Republic, to tell us the news.
Su Majestad Felipe VI de España, integrantes del Consejo del World Jurist Association, estimados colegas y amigos. Cada Congreso Mundial del Derecho honra la visión de Charles Reines, Winston Churchill y Earl Warren, y muchos otros que reconocieron la importancia de unir a la comunidad legal global para apoyar el Estado de Derecho. Aunque los problemas de su época pueden parecer diferentes a los que enfrentamos ahora, son similares en muchas maneras. Cuando se cuestiona el Estado de Derecho, también se cuestiona la democracia. Hoy enfrentamos desafíos que provienen de muchos frentes: la desigualdad económica generalizada, nuevas formas de autoritarismo, la falta de efectividad, transparencia e independencia, así como el acceso limitado a la justicia y muchos otros factores. Con el objetivo de seguir buscando respuestas en asuntos tan cruciales para el bienestar de nuestra civilización, los colegas del Sistema Judicial de la República Dominicana nos unimos hoy al invitarlos a nuestro país en febrero de 2025 para el World Law Congress. Gracias a los integrantes del Consejo del World Jurist Association, en la persona de su presidente Javier Cremades, por hacer posible esta oportunidad para nuestro país. Como muchos saben, la República Dominicana ha trabajado incansablemente para superar muchísimas dificultades. Nuestro país ha experimentado un crecimiento económico envidiable y goza de una seguridad jurídica y estabilidad democrática que es un ejemplo para la región. Hemos reducido la pobreza en más de la mitad. También trabajamos para fortalecer y mejorar nuestro sistema de justicia. Nos honra ser anfitriones del Congreso Mundial de Derecho 2025. Apuntamos a continuar la visión de aquellos primeros inspiradores y convertirnos en ese espacio de intercambio de experiencias y buenas prácticas. Permítanme expresarlo de esta manera. Tratamos de lograr en nuestro sistema judicial lo que hemos logrado en el béisbol, jugar en grandes ligas. Los esperamos en Santo Domingo, República Dominicana, que será la capital mundial del derecho y la justicia en el cálido febrero de 2025. Su Majestad, allá lo esperamos. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, President, and we are really looking forward in the year 2025 to be in your extraordinary country. Your Royal Highness, in my capacity as Vice President of the World Law Foundation, I am honored to host the opening of the Rule of Law Digital Center. Sometimes it happens in life that dreams become true, and we are living one of these moments. Out of the wisdom that legal texts are not enough to build and to preserve the rule of law, was born the idea to create a physical and digital place where the rule of law can be developed, exchanged, discussed, and disseminated worldwide. A place of encounter for all those scholars, jurists, business communities, students, teachers, researchers, volunteers, all those who want to give life to our fundamental rights, to our individual and societal values. A place which the storytelling about the basic difference between rule by law and rule of law can be elaborated and explained. A place in which the why and the how of human dignity can be recorded and sent out to people of all beliefs, all conditions, all ages, all nations. New technologies will be used to benefit the human potential and to enhance the work of the Foundation. So let me thank you all who have made the building and the realization of the center possible. The dedicated teams of collaborators and of trustees, the numerous sponsors, and the orchestra of Venezuelan humanitarians displaced in Spain who accompanied us with their music. Your Majesty, today we make Madrid the world jurist capital. And may this only be a first of so many digital rule of law centers duplicated worldwide. Thank you. After having now inaugurated the rule of law place, let's see in a video to be presenting the ceremony of the World Peace and Liberty Award.
He is young, he is handsome, he is articulate, he's just a great human being. Andrew Young.
Civil rights icon, Andrew Young.
Andrew Young is a man who's not just taking care of your own personal family, but one who is taking care of humankind.
Andy Young spent a lifetime of trying to make life better for all of us.
Andrew Young became the first black man in 100 years to be elected to Washington from the Deep South.
I started running because basically there was a reservoir of goodwill that would respond to somebody that called on people to live and work together.
Andy is that guy who can do it.
The swearing in of Andrew Young to be the new U.S. ambassador to the United Nations.
The former Georgia congressman drew louder applause than the president when he entered the East Room.
Of all the people I've ever known in public service, Andy Young is the best.
Filled with most of the nation's black leadership, many of whom had been colleagues when Young was an aide to Martin Luther King Jr.
Andrew Young helped draft the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and later became the first African-American to serve as ambassador to the United Nations.
Perhaps the most influential ambassador to the United Nations America has ever had.
President Carter has now authorized me to state that the United States is prepared to join with other members of this council in proposing a mandatory arms embargo under Chapter 7 of the Charter.
There was a lot going on to help get Mandela out of jail.
You were a key player in the first major moves to eliminate apartheid in Africa.
Nelson Mandela was finally released on February 11th, 1990.
Thousands of blacks swarmed into the streets. The sounds of rejoicing were everywhere.
You started a path for future leaders for how America can lead morally in an ever-changing world. And your work was just getting started. Mayor of Atlanta for 8 years, you built on what Mayor Jackson started.
And Mayor Andrew Young began a plan for Atlanta to host the 1996 Centennial Olympics. Their plan included a convergence of business, politics. It wouldn't be easy. Both were mocked initially, but soon it would all change.
It was my job to help them understand that all people were children of God. The way you overcome racism and segregation is by blessing those that persecute you, doing good to those who hate you, turning the other cheek.
power of the Lord comes down. Amen.
What a personality. I'm calling now on Kim Qualls, Executive Vice President of the World Jurist Association, to read the act of the Board of Directors of the World Jurist Association. Kim, you have the floor.
Thank you, Vivian, Your Majesty, Ambassador Young, honored guests. It is indeed my privilege to present the following resolution that was adopted by the Board of Directors of the World Jurist Association. Whereas the World Jurist Association is a non-governmental organization with consultative rights at the United Nations, with the UN Economic and Social Committee and the Department of Global Administration. Whereas the World Jurist Association provides a unique, free, and open forum for the international legal community, where judges, lawyers, professors, politicians, law students can all work around the world cooperatively to strengthen and promote the rule of law. Whereas a rule of law, ruled by law, not force, has been the World Jurist Association's mission since its founding in 1963. And through events like this, the World Jurist Association continues to build on this foundation, calling for a system of laws that ensure global peace and equality without the use of law, without the use of force, and promotes values such as human dignity and equality. Whereas Andrew Jackson Young is an outstanding civil rights leader who has worked tirelessly for the social, political, and economic advancement of oppressed people, and through his continuous efforts, contributed to the ongoing opening of the way for many others globally to a more just and fair society. Whereas amongst his significant endeavors, which was just highlighted on the film, Mr. Young assisted in the drafting of both the U.S. Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the U.S. Voting Rights Act of 1965. And after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, became the executive vice president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference for 2 years, from 1968 to 1970. And whereas Mr. Young was the first African American to serve as the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, appointed by U.S. President Jimmy Carter, and was awarded the highest civil award from the United States, the award of the Presidential Freedom Award. Whereas, in an extraordinary way, Andrew Young represents the values of the World Jurist Association because he has been an example to humanity for the defense of the rule of law throughout his long and storied career. Whereas the rule of law is the only alternative to force, and only under the rule of law can human beings live in peace and freedom. And as an organization, the World Jurist Association recognizes these individuals. As a result, Supreme Court Justice Earl Warren and the founder of the World Jurist Association, Charlie Ryan, created the World Peace and Liberty Award to recognize and honor those individuals who exemplify the principles of the World Jurist Association. This award has been previously awarded to people such as René Cassin, who was the co-founder of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, His Majesty King Felipe VI of Spain, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Whereas in 2023, the World Jurist Association intends to further advance this legacy and project that legacy into the future, we present the award that many consider and call the Nobel Prize of Law. It is my honor to present this declaration, and now therefore, in honor of these great achievements of Andrew Young, In Madrid, on the 8th day of May, the World Jurist Association grants him the World Peace and Liberty Award, so approved by the Board of Directors of the World Jurist Association. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim, for the declaration of the official decision. And now I would like to call to the stage those who brought the men to Madrid. And these are the Lynn Rogers, the trustee of the World Law Foundation, and Alexia Rogers, the supporters of Ambassador Andrew Young's legacy. Please, you have the floor.
Your Majesty, honored guest, Ambassador, what has not been said about Ambassador Andrew Young? Ambassador, Mayor, U.S. Representative, pastor, leader, activist, mentor, scholar, husband, father, and most of all, friend to so many. At 91, he is still speaking and mentoring into the lives of the next generation of leaders, scholars, CEOs. Ambassador Young has been an advisor to 6 presidents. He has been a bridge builder, not just across political aisles, but across race, social economic classes in humility, and has sought the best in people and humanity. Ambassador Young has been a voice of reason. 2 of his quotes: "We rise to glory when we sink in pride. To whom much is given, much is required. Not expected, but required." The credit belongs to the man or the woman who actually is in the arena, whose face is mired with dust, sweat, and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there's no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deed, who knows with great enthusiasm and great devotion, who spends themselves for a worthy cause, who at the best knows great achievement, at the worst fails. But he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither knew victory nor defeat. Theodore Roosevelt. What binds us together is the passion for every person to have the right to vote, unencumbered in a democracy, with freedom for all people of equal representation, without bias or prejudice. In a recent conversation, the bond with Ambassador Young was further strengthened, given our shared passion for affordable health care, housing, and education, the opportunity for every person to grow and achieve their dreams and ambitions in life. It is a testament in his life, his belief in God and humanity. A short poem that for me represents Ambassador Young's life and legacy. It is the lives that he touches and shares, his wisdom, mentoring, which has led with love. "Walk a little slower, Father," said the little boy. "I'm following in your footsteps, and I don't want to fail. Sometimes your steps are very clear, sometimes they're hard to see. So walk a little slower, Father, for you are leading me." Words do not express the love we have for Ambassador Young. He continues to give of himself to his beliefs of making the world a better place. I want to congratulate him on this award today, the Nobel Prize of Law. Receiving this award, Ambassador Young, you exclude a list of awardees: Sir Winston Churchill, Rene Cassin, Nelson Mandela, our Spanish King, Philip, Justice Ruth Ginsburg, and the people of Colombia. I just want to say, do you want to do this? Okay. She says no. It is the faith in God and love that has led us to where we are today. He is a living example of life and love. There's a scripture that says, and I quote, "Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance." three things last forever: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. His faith in humanity, his hope in future generations, his love for all God's people around the world. Ambassador Young not only forgave those who mistreated him, even threatened his life, but he lived for the principles of nonviolence that left his opponents whole and better off than when he found him. Thank you, Ambassador, for your example, for your leadership, and for your love.
The next testimony is for the son of Andrew Young, Bo Young. Please take the floor.
Good afternoon. I'm a little younger, so I keep my remarks on my phone, not on a sheet of paper. I want to just first start by thanking you, Your Majesty, for hosting us here in your country. I want to thank you, Javier, for your kind organization in honoring my father and bringing this legacy forward. I think it's very important that, as you can see, the message of my father is one that resonates with the world, and so the more that he's recognized and acknowledged for his work throughout Europe and the world is very meaningful to us and meaningful to the Andrew Young Foundation and my father's legacy. So thank you both very much. I just want to quickly acknowledge the Andrew Young Foundation executives who are here. If you could just raise your hand quickly. Sylvia and Gaurav and Petra. We actually brought a whole delegation with us, and so if the whole Andrew Young delegation could just raise your hand. Strive Masiwa is back there, the Crystal family. We've got many people who came to join us, the Bryants, thank you. Thank you to Lynn and Alexia for underwriting this and helping this to all come together. It's a very strong friendship. My wife, Angelica, and Alexia are both from Venezuela and are very close friends and tennis partners, and so this has all kind of come together from a very interesting standpoint. But my purpose here is to just kind of humanize my father, just as Andrew Young, the guy. And so I want to acknowledge my wife, Angelica, who's here with me today. And we have 3 children, Abigail, Andrew the 4th, and Amelia, who are home in Atlanta and hopefully getting ready for school soon. But I'm the youngest child of Andrew and Jean Young. I have 3 older sisters, Andrea Young Thomas, a lawyer and executive director of the ACLU of Georgia, Lisa Young Austin, who's an engineer, and Paula Young Shelton, an educator and author of children's books. My father was married to my mother, Jean, for 40 years before she passed away of cancer. But he was lucky enough to remarry another educator, Carolyn. And they've been going strong now for over 25 years. And so thank you, Carolyn, for being here with us. My father has 9 grandchildren total, including my 3. And he also has a great-grandchild, Amari Catherine, who's 3 years old. My father was born in New Orleans, Louisiana, in a devout Christian household to Dr. Andrew Young Sr., a dentist, and Daisy Fuller Young, an educator. My father also has a brother, Walter, who's 88 and practiced dentistry for 65 years. And he's my golf buddy. He still plays golf with me at least once a week at 88. My father's childhood, he was taught a passage that Lynn mentioned, which is Luke 12, verse 48. To whom much is given, much will be required. His upbringing was deeply rooted in the importance of good education, a strong faith, and a responsibility to give back to others, no matter what. He has spent his entire life closely following these principles every day. On a lighter side, My father's a fun guy. He enjoys dancing and loves to sing, even though he's not the best singer. You know, he likes a good joke, and he always enjoys a good laugh. He was an athlete who ran track and also swam at Howard University. When his knees were a little stronger, he also enjoyed playing basketball and having a competitive game of tennis with family and friends. For his 75th birthday, my dad swam 75 laps to raise money for the YMCA, which is named for him and his brother, the Andrew and Walter Young YMCA. My father continues to live a complete life, tirelessly at 91 to help the world be a better place. He is a disciplined, compassionate, selfless, and giving person who can find the good in everyone. He lives in the same house that he bought in 1966 when he was working with Dr. King. He still lives strictly by the values and beliefs that he was taught some 80 years ago by Andrew and Daisy Young. Andrew Young is living a complete human experience that we can all learn from. And I want to thank you again, Javier, for highlighting that and making us a part of the World Jurist family. The Andrew Young Foundation and the World Law Foundation will forever be associated together, consummated here today. So I just want to say on behalf of the Young family and the extended Young family that's here and also at home back in the U.S., thank you all for having us, and we're very appreciative to be here.
And now we turn to the Laudatio, which is going to be given by Leonel Fernandez, past President of the Dominican Republic. The floor is yours.
Su Majestad Felipe VI de España, Dr. Javier Cremades, President of the World Jurist Association, Ambassador Young, Your Excellencies, distinguished members of the organizing committee, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. Today, on behalf of the World Jurist Association and on my own, we're thrilled and delighted to celebrate and honor the lifetime achievements of a living icon and a legend of the civil rights movement, Andrew Young. Born in 1932, the year in which Franklin Delano Roosevelt was elected president and the Great Depression was in full swing, there was hope that the crisis would come as an opportunity for a new generation to redeem the soul of America. That was your generation, Ambassador Young. As was stated by Bo, your father, Andrew Young Sr., a dentist, and your mother, Daisy Fuller Young, a former school teacher, raised you and your brother Walt at a time when Jim Crow racial segregation norms were the law of the South. Your parents' faith was based in three elements: God, hard work, and education. Their devotion in a loving God sustained their conviction that as a family, you would prevail over the hard restrictions of discrimination. In the predominantly white neighborhood where you grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana, fear was commonly present, with an Irish grocery store in one corner, an Italian bar on another, and the headquarters of the Nazi Party on the third corner. Your father hired a boxer to teach you to defend yourself. But sitting in a movie theater, watching Jesse Owens win the 1936 Olympic medal in Berlin, and knowing Hitler in the extreme, you understood the meaning of don't get mad, get smart. Embracing from there on Mahatma Gandhi's principle of nonviolence. Right from the beginning, you were an exceptional, unique person. When you entered school, you already knew how to read and write. You were the youngest in your class. In 1955, you graduated from Howard University and later earned a degree from Hartford Theological Seminary when you were just 23 years old. Soon after, you served in a church in Marion, Alabama. In 1957, you were ordained a congregational minister and named pastor in Thomasville, Georgia. These experiences made you aware of the poverty in African Americans, what they suffered in the rural South, and that inspired you to work as a civil rights activist. It was during that time that you first met Martin Luther King Jr., when both of you were invited by your fraternity to speak at Talladega College. You often joked that you were only invited to be there in case Dr. King didn't show up, who at the time was the pastor of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. You both showed up, and that's the first time you met him for any length of time. You were on a program together most of the day, and in the course of that time, both of you realized that your wife Jean and his wife Coretta had grown up in the same little Alabama town and had gone to the same high school. Dr. King suggested you stop off in Montgomery while driving back to Thomasville and meet his new baby. You both had new baby girls. You never talked about politics. You never talked about civil rights. He was fascinated with his baby girl. You were fascinated with your baby girl. So you were just playing dads. But it established a relationship that opened the door for you to go back to the South to work with him. In 1961, Jean and you were living in Queens, in New York, and you just bought a house. John Lewis, another titan of the Civil War, of the Civil Rights era, came in television with a Nashville sit-in story. You had been down to Nashville and met him and the team. You were working together, but after seeing them in their national television, Jean said, "It's time for you to go back home." At the same time, you had just gotten a letter from Martin Luther King. One of his assistants in New York had come to have dinner with you and your wife and talk about coming back to the South. So you decided to go back to Georgia to an office just across the hall from Martin Luther King Jr. with a new job and to answer all the letters from his fans and friends. You became one of his most trusted advisors, and you played a key role in shaping his thinking on a range of issues, including economic justice and international affairs. Your return to Georgia took place in a significant moment in the civil rights movement. You played a key role in the SCLC's successful mobilization to open up public facilities and register African American voters. You served as a key strategist and negotiator during the Birmingham nonviolent protest campaign, whose goal was to desegregate schools, parks, and to end police brutality against African Americans. Hundreds of protesters were arrested in Birmingham, including Martin Luther King Jr., who wrote his famous letter from prison in response to 8 white religious leaders of the South who unwisely expressed their concerns for the justified nonviolent protest. As you were heading a march in St. Augustine, Florida, in 1964, you were attacked and beaten by the Ku Klux Klan. In March 1965, you walked 54 miles from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama, as part of the effort to register black voters. Despite being confronted with deadly violence from local authorities, protesters reached their goal on that bloody Sunday. All these campaigns were major turning points in the civil rights movement and helped build momentum for the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 during the administration of President Lyndon B. Johnson. In all these historical and decisive moments, you, Mr. Andrew Young, were always there, always in the front line, putting your life at risk. On August 28, 1963, more than 200,000 demonstrators gathered in Washington, D.C. by the Lincoln Memorial to demand equality and freedom. It became one of the defining moments of the civil rights movement. You share the values and the emotional strength of Martin Luther King's historical speech, I Have a Dream, in which he stated, quote, I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today, unquote. You were part of the dream. Even though you advised not going there, you were with Martin Luther King in Memphis, Tennessee, when he was assassinated in April 1968. You were devastated by his death, but you voted to continue the fight for civil rights. Thus, the struggle continued. Celebrating the movement of the Spirit, you quoted from the Bible. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rules of darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. As had been addressed within the civil rights movement, you moved into politics, and in 1972, you were the first African American elected to the House of Representatives from the Deep South since Reconstruction, and the first from Georgia in a century. You were re-elected in 1974, and in 1976, in the House, you were a member of the Congressional Black Caucus. You were a highly respected and influential member of the House Banking Committee, the Finance and Urban Affairs Committees. You opposed cuts in social programs. You became a vocal critic against the Vietnam War, and you helped build support for the peace movement. In 1977, President Jimmy Carter appointed you as the first African-American ambassador to the United Nations, where you established a close relationship with African countries that were struggling against colonialism, apartheid, and post-colonialism. In 1981, you were elected mayor of Atlanta, where you left a long-lasting legacy. You transformed Atlanta into a modern city by expanding the Atlanta International Airport, attracting $70 billion in foreign direct investment, creating 1 million new jobs in the region, and overseeing a period of rapid economic growth. I can personally testify to that when I visited the city in 1988 for the Democratic National Convention. I was truly impressed. It was a vibrant, dynamic, energetic, beautiful city. The undisputable evidence of the hard work of a great mayor. As a spiritual leader, as a civil rights activist, as a diplomat, as an educator, as a politician, as an author, Andrew Young is a powerful voice of peace, a true role model to all who pursue prosperity and well-being. En nombre de la Asociación Mundial de Juristas, constituye para mí un gran honor concederle a Andrew Young, líder estadounidense de los derechos civiles, el galardón mundial de la paz y la libertad. Thank you, Ambassador Young, for your leadership and your tireless dedication in favor of human rights, dignity, justice, and equality. May God bless you, and may your example inspire generations to come. Thank you.
May I ask the witnesses of the awarding to move up with the President, Xavier Cremades, Pilar Lop, the Minister of Justice of Spain, Navi Pillay, United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Didier Reynders, Commissioner for Justice of the European Union, and Lynn Rogers, Trustee of the World Law Foundation and supporter of Andre Young legacy. Royal Majesty, please. May I ask Andrew Young to move to the receive?
Struggle is a family struggle, as you see. And all of my children and my first wife of 40 years, and Carolyn and I have been married now 27 years. And thank you for this. And thank you for the friendships that you have brought to me through the years. And Lynn, I think you and Bo are going to have to take this. I'm only one and I can't carry it. Thank you very much. Just a minute or two. Can you hear in the back?
I have the microphone.
You know, I've had some of the best teachers in the world. Not only my parents, but, you know, I was a flunky for Martin Luther King. And Jimmy Carter made me an ambassador and sent me, between the two of them, they sent me all over the world. But in addition, anywhere there was trouble, President Carter said, Andy, why don't you check it out? And I said, well, the State Department really doesn't like me going beyond the scope of the UN ambassador. And they said, they don't have planes for this sort of thing. He said, tell me when you're going, and I'll have the plane ready here in Washington. And so we went looking for trouble. We didn't wait. Rosalind, his wife, and they're both struggling. They're both, I think he's 98 and she's 94. And I got word that they were rolled around Plains, Georgia, sightseeing this week. And so they're all right. But they entered the White House believing that the world could be changed, believing that wars could end. It was the only presidency in the history of the United States where we didn't kill anybody in the entire term of his office, and no American got killed in an act of war. And yet, he took on things like Panama Canal. And he called me up and said, Andy, you know Michael Manley, don't you? I said, yeah. I hear he knows Castro well. I said, I think so. They were buddies back. And he said, and what about Lopez Portillo and Carlos Andres Perez? And I said, yeah. I said, you know the Caribbean pretty well. He said, I need somebody to ask them to keep Castro quiet. We can get this Panama Canal thing settled, but if anybody says it's a good thing, the Senate will kill it. And if anybody says it's a bad thing, the Communist Party will kill it. He said, can't you see if you can keep people quiet for about 3 months? And in 3 months, the whole issue of Panama changed. And we had the first treaty in 400 years that was in some way fair to the Panamanians. The same thing with Camp David. He got word that Perez, Begin and Sadat really didn't want to have a war. And he invited him to Camp David. Long story short, they got nowhere. As they were leaving, he had a picture of Begin and his 8 grandchildren. And he gave it to Prime Minister Begin, and he got the message. If I don't do this now, I'm passing the troubles of the world on to my grandchildren. And he turned around, unpacked his bag, and in 3 more days, they got the Camp David Treaty, which I think still, between Egypt and Israel, no Egyptian nor no Israeli has been killed in this entire length of time. The peace for which you and I are working is not beyond our reach. It's right within our grasp. You might have to risk your life, and you might have to let people think you're crazy. Because when you believe that the earth makes sense, or that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, and when you act that way, it's amazing that you come in line with the forces of the universe. And so I'm here not by accident, but I think by divine intent. My teacher in elementary school in New Orleans, Louisiana, took me down with the class when I was 9 years old to see Thurgood Marshall argue a case for equalization of teachers' salaries. I didn't know what he was saying, but I saw a tall, skinny black man ordering the clerks. When he would call out a case and the clerk would go back to get the law book, he'd say, "You'll find that, Your Honor, on page 376. That impressed the hell out of me. The guy knew all the books of law. And so I have been a part of this quest for law. I decided that I wasn't a lawyer, but that the action of a nonviolent movement was perhaps far more effective if we had lawyers backing us up and charting the course. We can make sense of this wonderful planet. It's very, very complicated, but it was complicated for you all just to get in this room. And so I'm ready to keep on keeping on. And so I want to thank you for your faith in justice and your willingness to work for peace. God bless you.
May I call to the podium Didier Reynders, European Commissioner for Justice.
Your Majesty, dear Minister of Justice, dear Pilar, dear Xavier Cremades, dear Ambassador Young, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to speak before you at this opening session of the World Law Congress 2023. As we were reminded today, a world ruled by law and not by force is the key mission of the World Jurist Association. In the aftermath of the Second World War, Winston Churchill, together with the President of the US Bar Association and the Chief Justice of the United States, launched in 1957 the foundational programs that would later give rise to World Jurist Association and the World Law Congress. Since then, the World Law Congress has proven to be a key global forum in promoting the rule of law. Today, we celebrate exceptional women who have promoted rule of law and equality. We pay tribute to their admirable work. This year's laureates of the Ruth Bader Ginsburg Medals of Honor have demonstrated remarkable persistence and capacity to advance justice and peace. Just now, we had the opportunity to listen to Ambassador Young, and it is truly merited that his life's work is acknowledged with the World Peace and Liberty Award. His fight against oppression around the world has been extraordinary. His civil rights activism, his fight against apartheid, and his appointment as the first African-American US ambassador to the United Nations. And of course, it was also very pleasant to listen to different other stories, but I don't want to repeat, Ambassador. The Russian aggression against Ukraine reminds us of the importance to fight for a world ruled by law and not by force. I'm especially honored to deliver these closing remarks ahead of the recognition of the European Commission with the same award, which will be presented in July. My deep appreciation goes to the World Jurist Association for the acknowledgement of the work of the Commission for the promotion of the rule of law as a guarantor of freedom. And indeed, the European Union is a community of law, as the first president of the European Commission, Walter Hallstein, put it. It is founded on the values of human dignity, freedom, democracy, equality, rule of law, and human rights, which are central to its treaties and its Charter of Fundamental Rights. The European Commission, acting as guardian of the treaties, is committed to ensure that member states uphold the rule of law. And indeed, we have, over the past years, reinforced the range of our instruments to address effectively emerging challenges to the rule of law inside the European Union. One key instrument is the Commission's annual Rule of Law report. It provides the basis for our dialogue on the rule of law. Under my responsibility as Commissioner for Justice, the Commission has so far published 3 of these annual reports. The 4th edition will be published in July. The report covers all 27 member states on an equal footing and based on a transparent methodology. Its goal is to detect challenges at an early stage and prevent them from emerging or deteriorating. We monitor the same 4 pillars for all member states: national justice systems, the anti-corruption frameworks, media pluralism and media freedom, and other checks and balances in the institutional order in the different member states. The report is based on input from national authorities, NGOs, media outlets, judicial representatives, and many others. It enables a broader discussion on the rule of law. The report is discussed amongst ministers in the Council at the European level, in the European and national parliaments, but also with NGOs, stakeholders, and at academic conferences. This shows that dialogue on the rule of law unites us and enables positive change. In a number of EU countries, we have seen positive justice reforms influenced by the findings of the report and the exchange that follow. You have seen, Viviane, that after 3 years, it was possible to change the constitution in Luxembourg, just to reinforce the independence of the justice system. Last year's report include, for the first time, specific recommendations for each member state. These recommendations aim to support the member states in their efforts to implement reforms and learn from each other. Your Majesty, for example, we recommend for Spain to proceed with the renewal of the Council for the Judiciary as a matter of priority and initiate immediately after the renewal a process in view of adapting the appointment of judge members taking into account European standards. It will be positive to implement the recommendation before the beginning of the Spanish presidency of the Council of the European Union in July. In this year's report, we will follow up and assess how the recommendations have been addressed. When confronted to possible challenges to the rule of law, the Commission always first tries to enter in a dialogue with the member states concerned. Unfortunately, dialogue does not always bring results. Therefore, we have a dual approach: dialogue and, where necessary, decisive action. For instance, we can launch infringement procedures and ultimately seize the Court of Justice of the European Union. For example, the Commission launched an infringement procedure on the grounds that the new disciplinary regime undermines the judicial independence of Polish judges. Additionally, the Commission's enforcement in rule of law matters has been strengthened by new instruments. One of them is the conditionality regulation, adopted in 2020. It makes a link between respect for the rule of law and the protection of EU funds. And I must say that as former Minister of Finance in my own country, I know that the fact that it's possible to read recommendations in a report is very impressive for the governments. But the announcement that it will be possible to suspend some funding is maybe more impressive. On the basis of such a new regulation, the Commission launched a budgetary conditionality procedure concerning Hungary last year. Last December, the Council of Ministers adopted measures proposed by the Commission and to protect the Union budget in Hungary by suspending 55% of the commitments under 3 programs in cohesion policy, which amounts to approximately 6.3 billion euros for the period 21-27. In parallel, the Council has tried also to go further, because the Council adopted the Commission's proposal for Hungary Recovery and Resilience Plan, which will be financed by 5.8 billion in grants. However, this endorsement includes the condition of a full and effective implementation of a large number of so-called milestones and concerning judicial independence. And it's very important to say that no payment under the Recovery and Resilience Facility will be made until Hungary has fully and correctly implemented these milestones. The Polish Recovery and Resilience Plan includes also milestones concerning judicial independence, with the same consequence in terms of any payment. Ladies and gentlemen, the EU treaties also make the rule of law a guiding principle for the international action. Promoting the rule of law worldwide is a key enabler for progress in all other policy areas. It fosters stability, sustainable economic development, trade, and investment. It enables judicial cooperation and ensures the proper enforcement of all other rights and duties. Promoting the rule of law is our priority, especially as regards enlargement and neighborhood countries. This is why the EU enlargement methodology follows the fundamentals first principle. It makes progress on the rule of law and the protection of fundamental rights the key benchmark for the EU accession process. And this is necessary in order to preserve our identity as community of values. We will assess the progress made by the Western Balkans countries, Moldova, Ukraine, or Georgia in this key benchmark. And we are using the same approach with many other partners in the world to try to promote with like-minded partners the rule of law. Your Majesty, maybe I want to conclude to say that I was impressed to see all the interventions today and to see, first of all, the common approach of many men and women in the promotion of the rule of law, but also many people coming from all over the world. And let me highlight that the European Commission and the World Jurist Association stand side by side in promoting and defending the rule of law with the aim of ultimately creating a rule of law culture across the world. I'm glad that these values are recognized and promoted by so many, as illustrated by the distinguished guests present today. The European Commission is proud to represent these values, and it's a great honor that our engagement is recognized and that in July, a woman, the President Ursula von der Leyen, will travel to the World Law Congress in New York to receive the World Peace and Liberty Award. So many thanks for such a kind of appreciation, and of course be sure that we'll continue to work together with the Member States, with our partners in Europe, but also with many partners in the rest of the world to promote and to protect the rule of law. Our main goal is to try to install a culture of the rule of law all around the world, and maybe we have a lot of work to do to reach such a goal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Didier Reynders, and thank you also for introducing already what will happen in July this year in New York, when the President of the European Commission will receive the Nobel Prize of Jurist for the action in the rule of law of the European Union. We're coming to the end of a very strong day, a strong day where we have seen and heard strong people engaging for the rule of law. And we have the great honor to have His Majesty the King speak the last in order to round up what has been presented today, what force has been put inside in the inauguration of this place for the future, to make it a starting point for the rule of law worldwide. Please, Your Majesty, the floor is yours.
I was actually getting worried to have to step on the pulpit. Thank you, Vivian, for your introduction. It's quite an honor and quite a challenge, I must add. Ministra de Justicia, European Commissioner for Justice, Presidente y miembros de la World Jurist Association, awardees with the Ruth Bader Ginsburg Medal of Honor, Audis with the World Jurist Association Medal of Honor, Ambassador Young, World Peace and Liberty Award. Allow me also to highlight the presence of former Presidents Leonel Fernandez from the Dominican Republic, and thank you for your words, and also the presence of Jaime Paz Zamora, former President of the Bolivian Republic. Authorities, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all, and a special word of gratitude to Professor Jane Ginsberg, present with us as well. Muy buenos días a todos. I will be speaking in English, but I would love to acknowledge the fact that a lot of people here speak both English and Spanish. It is indeed just such a great pleasure to be with all of you once again and to have listened to all the powerful words we've heard this morning in this event convened by the World Jurist Association, an event that focuses on so many different issues and ideas that are truly relevant to our lives and lie at the heart of what we all here firmly believe. In my remarks, I will obviously refer back to many of what has been said, these ideas which are the common thread of what we have heard throughout the entire morning. However, I would like to begin by conveying my most heartfelt congratulations to High Commissioner and Judge Navi Pillay, to Lady Brenda Hale, to Judge Asifa Kakar, to Imran Jalal, and Ambiga Serenevasan, recipients of the Ruth Bader Ginsburg Medal of Honor. The five women we honor today work in both different specialized fields and countries, but each one of them has made a decisive contribution within their professional scope and responsibilities to promoting the rule of law and gender equality around the world. Their work honors the historic legacy of Justice Ginsburg, who was a shining example of the promotion and defense of those commitments, not just in her career, but in her life, always remaining faithful to her motto, real change, enduring change, happens one step at a time. I'm also very happy to congratulate the recipients of the World Jurist Association's Medal of Honor, Professor Manuel Aragon, Pedro Pérez Llorca, and Luis de Carlos Beltrán. The medal recognizes the contributions of these three exceptional men as leading jurists who have devoted their lives to serving the law with rigor, dedication, and professionalism. They have taught and practiced law, upholding it as a fundamental aspect of their and all of our lives. Allow me here to refer specifically to Manuel Aragon. You will understand why. My dear professor, you are now adding a new and well-deserved recognition to your long and extensive career, in which you remained very active to this very day. A few weeks ago, I celebrated, together with my class of '93 from the Autonomous University of Madrid, the 30th anniversary of our law degree. I cannot but recognize the role of Professor Aragon had, not only for me, for my class, but for a whole generation or several generations of students in our deep learning and understanding of constitutional law. His teachings did not end when we graduated. To this day, we continue to learn from him. The World Jurist Association honors today a brilliant and prolific jurist, a man who is committed to his country and to the profound essence of justice with a deep sense of duty. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with others. So now you understand why I went a bit at length to highlight this medal. Dear Ambassador Young, It has been an honor to bestow on you the highest distinction of the association, the World Peace and Liberty Award. To meet you, to listen to your words, to know a bit more about your long and dedicated life has been both a lecture and a humbling experience. One step at a time, as Justice Ginsburg said. Ambassador Young has contributed to change for the better the course of history in the United States of America, and now he is undoubtedly a part of it. He did so through his own experience, through the efforts of a lifetime. His contribution, together with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., in the fight against racial segregation in the United States is widely known. He himself suffered from it and was an active member in the fight for civil rights in his country, contributing to draft the 1964 Civil Rights Act and the 1965 Voting Rights Act. As the U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, he also promoted the defense of human rights and the progress in peace of developing countries. Service to others has defined his career, during which he has held several positions, as we have heard, Mayor of Atlanta and Senator of the state of Georgia, always with a spirit of humility, pacifism, and serenity, always acting based on his convictions, on doing what was right, on helping others. President Carter honored him with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian award in his country. This new recognition today is an excellent opportunity to study and learn from his work and his legacy outside of the United States. Congratulations, Ambassador Young. To all those who we recognize today their many merits, it is an honor to have you here in Spain, in Madrid. 9 magnificent careers, 9 formidable examples of personal commitment to the law, to the rule of law, and to defending human and civil rights. Congratulations, and forever we thank you for your work and for your example. Ladies and gentlemen, we find ourselves today in this magnificent new Rule of Law Digital Center in Madrid that now opens shop in our nation's capital. We're proud to have you among us and to be your hosts. And what a great day to inaugurate it. In a few moments, I hope to have an opportunity to visit a little more in detail. But I think we can safely agree that it truly represents yet another step of the international legal community to move ahead, to adapt and adequate its capabilities through digital media in order to stay on course for the cause of justice and sail through these rapidly changing times. Madrid thus becomes one of the great world capitals for the law and a point of encounter open to conversation and dialogue. Created by the World Law Foundation and the World Jurist Association, with the support of the law firm Cremades y Calvo Sotelo, its objective is to promote and to educate about the fundamental principles of the rule of law, especially in today's digital world. This new space will be the setting for an ongoing campaign to defend peace and freedom, with the law as the most fundamental tool for success. We welcome, we value, we acknowledge initiatives like this one because it is also through them that step by step we can achieve great things. Ladies and gentlemen, today on such a special occasion, one of homage and celebration, the next World Law Congress has been presented. New York takes the baton from Barranquilla, Colombia, next July to host the 28th edition, coinciding with the 60th anniversary of the association, for which I offer in advance my sincere congratulations. And we all do here and wish them great luck and success. For 60 years, the association has carried out exceptional work, mobilizing the international legal community in a global campaign to promote governance of laws, not of men, the rule of law, not the rule of arbitrary decisions, authoritarianism, and brute force, the rule of law, not tyranny. Now is a good moment to remember that the creation of the World Jurist Association took place at the height of the Cold War to promote an idea that remains extraordinarily relevant. Only under a governance of laws, under the protection of the law, can we guarantee that citizens and their nations will be able to live in peace and freedom. Three great leaders, as you well know, Charles Ryan, President of the American Bar Association, Earl Warren, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States, and Sir Winston Churchill, launched this great global campaign. Since 2019, for the first time, a Spaniard presides over this American organization, Javier Cremades. It is certainly a great source of pride. This year, the World Law Congress returns to the country where the association was born, the United States of America. The association plays a priceless international role in promoting this ideal, fostering a worldwide conversation about law involving Chief Justices of Supreme Courts and Constitutional Courts, Attorney General, lawyers, law professors, and activists, students, all dedicated to the law. Mutual learning and the exchange of ideas and legal concepts is crucial in order to build a global legal consensus based on and thereby recognizing the inherent dignity of all people. Now that more than a year has passed since the Russian invasion of Ukraine began, the motto of this Congress becomes a call to embrace the law in an increasingly tumultuous world. The repercussions and the worldwide impact of this conflict are obviously affecting international peace and security. Democracy itself is also seriously affected. Many parts of the world are suffering an erosion in the functioning and adherence to democratic principles, which also naturally erodes the rule of law. Therefore, it is urgent that we defend it. As Venezuelan poet Rafael Cadenas recently said when he received the 2022 Cervantes Prize, and I quote, "Es un trabajo de todos, hacedero solo con la plena libertad." It is everyone's work, which can only be done with total freedom. A far-reaching message that actually invites us to action in order to be effective. Everyone's work includes all of us who firmly believe in human rights, the separation of powers, and independent judiciary, respect for the territorial integrity of states, and the peaceful resolution of conflicts through the law. What is at stake here is a preservation of the best model that civilization has ever created to guarantee peaceful coexistence, a constitutional and democratic state under the rule of law. Our commitment to these principles, to freedom and democracy, which have been the common thread throughout this morning's sessions, is what defines us and also what unites us. There can be no higher commitment. Thank you all very much, and hopefully see you in New York.